Welcome to Our View, the podcast, where we're changing the conversation about disability one story at a time. Here at Our View, we're all about education, awareness, and shifting perspectives. With each episode, we dive into honest, meaningful conversations with individuals from across the disabled community, amplifying voices, sharing lived experiences, and challenging the way society sees disability. Because disability isn't a limitation, it's a part of the human experience. So pull up a seat and join us as we broaden the view and bring real, powerful stories into focus. This is Our View. I would like to welcome everyone back to a new episode of Our View, the podcast. I'm your host, Arthur Aston, and here on the podcast, we aim to educate, raise awareness, and change the tone of conversation about disabilities. I'm excited today to welcome my guest, Shameka Andrews. So, Shameka, thank you for joining me for this conversation. I'm looking forward to having you share your story with everyone.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, to start the podcast, I ask all of my guests to please introduce themselves. You can share as much or as little of your story as you'd like, and some of your hobbies, things you like to do for fun, however much you're comfortable with sharing.
So I'm Shameka Andrews. I was born and raised in Albany, New York. I am the oldest of four children, the only one born with a disability. I was born with spina bifida. Um, and I like to say, often you hear, they say a lady doesn't share her age, but because doctors said that I wouldn't live past the age of 5, I like telling people my age. So I am 48 years old. My birthday is New Year's Day, so I just turned 48 not too long ago. And so, what some things I like to do, interestingly enough, I'm known as the butterfly on wheels because I'm known for two very different, distinct things. Um, I do meditation workshops, and I'm a fan of pro wrestling. So those are two very different things. Um,
Love that.
so
I love it.
But those are two of my favorite things. I also love music. I love preferably 80s and 90s music. So I love going to concerts. When I'm not advocating at the Capitol or doing some sort of advocacy thing, that's what I do. I love music. Music is a big part of my life.
Shamika, we're about to be friends. Yes, music is my favorite. I love concerts. Right before I came on here, maybe about a half hour ago, I was texting one of my cousins. New Edition is on tour with Boys to Men and Tony Braxton, and they'll be in Philly this coming weekend. And we were talking about getting tickets to go to that concert. So, and
Nice.
Jill Scott, she's going on tour, and her tickets went on sale this morning. So we've had conversations about music all morning today. So, yes, so I definitely relate to that. And thank you so much for sharing your story. And I also uh, as you mentioned, the doctors had, said that you wouldn't live past the age of 5. I was told past the age of 15. And so I'll be 45 this year. So yes, I proudly tell my age as well. As you said, that is definitely something that we, have to celebrate, and not just on our birthdays. Every day is, very important to celebrate. So thank you for sharing that. And because we are close in age, you mentioned pro wrestling. So the 80s and early 90s of wrestling, the best era of wrestling, in my opinion. So yeah,
Absolutely.
when you mentioned that, I was on mute, but I said, "Oh my gosh, like that's so great." Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that. And so as you mentioned, you were born with spina bifida, as was I. Can you share a little bit more about what it's like for you living as an adult with spina bifida and how this diagnosis impacts your daily life?
Everyone born with spina bifida has, what's called a lesion along their spine. Mine is kind of in the middle, so it basically affects the lower half of my body. I'm a full-time power chair user, so that's how I get around. So issues with accessibility is a big challenge in my life, especially, advocating around, New York State or, anywhere in the world. All places aren't accessible, even our own, state capital. There's issues with, accessibility. So, and on top of that, I don't drive, so I rely on public transportation. So that presents its own challenges. Um, but, despite those challenges, I try to, enjoy my life as much as possible. And yet, like we had said before, I have many jobs, many titles. Um, that all are related to the advocacy world and the disability world. So it's important to me to be able to live my life, um, to the best of my ability, despite those challenges.
Yes, thank you. As you mentioned with spina bifida, it impacts every person that has a diagnosis of spina bifida, it impacts them differently. So,
Correct.
and that's with every disability. So I always like to share, ask our guests to share, how their specific diagnosis impacts their individual life because it is very different for every person. So, and that helps with our listeners and people who are subscribed to our YouTube channel to really understand that, I can interview 8 people with spina bifida and it impacts everybody differently.
Yeah, we definitely, I used to work at the Independent Living Center and we had 6 people there that at the time all had spina bifida and we were all completely different. There were people that were in power chairs, there were people that were in manual chairs, there were people that used crutches, and then there were people that didn't use any kind of mobility device at all.
Right.
And we always say when you meet one person with spina bifida, you meet one person.
Yeah.
So and it's known as the snowflake condition because
Hmm.
we're all, even though we all may have spina bifida, it's completely different. Our day-to-day lives are completely different. None of us are the same. Just like you said, with any disability, just because, you meet somebody that might have CP or whatever, it doesn't mean that everybody that you meet with CP is going to be like that one person.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I always like to ask that question just to show people what a range, how it impacts people along a range, and it does go with the, as you mentioned, the lesion that that you have along your spine. So thank you for sharing that. So in preparation for our conversation, and you just mentioned yourself in sharing your previous answer that you are a disability advocate. And part of that advocacy work, you're working with a few organizations, you hold a few job titles um, in those spaces, and I'm going to take time to list them because it's so important. I was impressed with the amount of work that you do because it's tough work, and I'm glad that there's somebody out there like you who's doing this work. So part of your many jobs, you are community outreach coordinator for the Advocacy Association of New York State. You are state coordinator for the Miss Wheelchair New York competition, and you serve on the Council for Developmental Disabilities and the Disability Advisory Council for the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. Again, fantastic. Wanted to make sure that I mentioned all of those, because it deserves the attention for the work that you're doing. So the next 2 questions, it's a two-part question. Can you share with us some of your responsibilities for these positions? And also, Why is advocacy work within the disability community, and particularly the advocacy work done by those who are disabled, so important?
Absolutely. So let's start with my work at Self Advocacy Association. I am the community outreach coordinator, as you said, and through that job, my responsibility is to talk to people about what the organization does. So I do a lot of our social media, a lot of our statements that are put out about certain issues. I help our board, craft those sort of things, looking at our policies, how we do different things, when we're like this time of the year, we're spending a lot of time at the Capitol, meeting with legislators, talking about the issues um, that are important to us as an organization and to other people with disabilities. Um, I do a lot of our, like I said, I do a lot of our social media. So if you follow us online or Facebook, those posts that you see, they come from me. Um, so that's my primary job at and going to events. Like today, I spent the day at the Capitol, right? Before I came on with you, going to meetings, being a representative for our organization at different rallies, at different events, different committee meetings, things like that. Now, Miss Wheelchair. So Miss Wheelchair in New York is an advocacy and empowerment uh, competition for women who use wheelchairs. And I am currently the coordinator of Miss Wheelchair New York, which means that I am responsible for putting together our annual event, which actually happened to which happened actually this past weekend, this past Saturday, we crowned. It was my 11th competition, crowning my 11th title holder. Um, and if you follow me on Facebook, as soon as we're done here, I'll be posting all the pictures from the weekend and everything that we were doing. So that's my primary job now, but I've been involved with Miss Wheelchair New York and Miss Wheelchair America. Miss Wheelchair New York is part of Miss Wheelchair America. We're currently one of 30 programs as part of Miss Wheelchair America. So I've been a part of the organization since 2004, and I was a title holder in 2006. So I've had probably every position there is in the organization, except for probably president. Um, so we host, like I said, an annual event where women from all over New York State come uh, and they share their advocacy platforms and they do online and in-person interviews about their advocacy work and why they want to represent the organization. And they spend a year advocating for whatever advocacy platform they've developed and learn about being a leader and a community organizer and promoting and bringing awareness to an advocacy issue that's important to them. And they go on to represent their state, in this case, New York, at the national competition in the summer, which is in Grand Rapids. So that's Miss Wheelchair, kind of a snippet of that. We are also on Facebook, so you can learn more about it there. Um, the councils, uh, the Council on Developmental Disabilities is an organization. They primarily we look at where there are gaps in services in New York State, and they provide grants to help cut to fill those gaps. So we look at issues as a council and say, our council is made up of individuals with disabilities and family members and people that work in the field. So we kind of look at what challenges we see in the field as people receiving services, as family members, and we say, okay, we should do work in this area. So we provided grants that helped with transportation. We've provided grants that helped with accessible recreation. So there's a lot of different projects that uh, the CDD, the Council on Developmental Disabilities, has helped fund. And the and finally, the the uh, Disability Advisory Council is the advisory council to the commissioner of OPWDD, which is the state-run disability services. So, and I'm a part of the the Employment and Meaningful Activities Committee. So, my job or our job as members of that committee is to look at issues concerning employment and meaningful activities for people with disabilities. And again, seeing how we can fill those gaps. And then we give recommendations to the state organization to say, this is what we think you should do to change this or make a dent in this. Um, so that is kind of a small snippet of what all of those all of those things are.
Yes, and again, such important work that you do, and um, the most interesting thing, and I was familiar with the Miss Wheelchair competition, and so to hear that you were part of being, the state coordinator for that for New York State, I was like, oh wow, that's so cool. And so I've heard of it and I've seen, different pictures and things, videos from events from that competition from around the country. So I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that, and then also all of the other work that you do on the councils and the
Yeah.
Association for the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State. So
Yeah,
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 thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And you asked me about why is it important, uh,
Yes.
for people with disabilities to advocate and sharing their stories and things like that. Because I think for the longest time we weren't heard and we weren't seen, right? And I think a lot of people don't realize that, now people are in, their communities, they're working in their communities, they're living in their communities. But even though that seems like that's always been happening, it hasn't. And it's still, for some people, still a struggle to get there. So, and hearing, and also, so nobody was asking us, what we want. What is the life we want? We're just now, from what I'm seeing, being asked those questions. What do you want? What do you want your life to look like? And, the people that they're asking, and still to this day, it's a struggle to get people to talk to us and hear us and respect us. Um, so that's why I think it's important because yes, it's important to hear from parents and family members and whatever, but I believe it's a different perspective. It's important, it's just as important, but what a parent goes through and what their child may go through, it comes from a different lens. So I think both sides of the coin and hearing um, both perspectives is very important because yes, they have a perspective and they, have to deal with, challenges from their, perspective as a parent or a family member. But, we're in it and we're living it. And we were, born with this, disability, whether it be spina bifida or whatever. So I think having that perspective and realizing and bringing that awareness is so important because there's still so many misconceptions and assumptions. And, I mean, even for me as a person, that people seem to think is everywhere and doing everything, you know, people before they even, they'll come up to me and they'll, you know, make statements that are their assumption before they even ask me a question. Or it's like, is that, it's like I look at people sometimes and they're like, I'm like, is that, are you asking me a question or are you making a statement? I'm
Right.
confused. Um, so there's just a lot of, I find, people have their own perception of what your life is like before they even ask you about it. So that's why I think it's
Yes, and I think what you said there is important that, having both perspectives of a parent, who has a child with a disability, and then the person with the disability themselves, their perspective, both of them they're valid perspectives, and both of them need to be heard. And it's interesting when you were talking, when you first started and you said we weren't seen, we weren't heard. And, that's so true. And, going back in time, you think about the disability rights movement, and I saw a lot of recent posts talking about Judy Human recently because it was sadly the anniversary of her passing earlier this month in March. And thinking about the work that she and other people have done, back in the 70s and, even the 60s. And, we've always been trying to get our names out there and get our faces seen and heard. And now even, with us, we're talking about we're in our 40s. So now our generation is loud, but the generation coming up behind us with the more social media apps and access to so many different things, they're even louder and they're out there doing big things. And it's really exciting and encouraging to see, um, the way that people with disabilities are being seen. And, I'm thinking about now with it's like I said, it's March, so it's March 10th, and the Paralympics are on, the Winter Paralympics are on TV, and that still has a long way to go. They don't get equal coverage like the Olympics get, but we're being seen somewhere. Social media has been really big with highlighting those athletes in the Paralympics now. Still working on those NBC platforms to highlight and give us primetime coverage like they do for the Olympics. And we'll get there one day, but we're working towards it. And like I said, the people like yourself who are out there doing this work, we are, like you said, you're at the Capitol today, just doing your work, and that's where places we need to be. So, and it's important. There's the old saying of nothing about us without us. That is so true that you shouldn't do things that involve people with disabilities without hearing the perspectives of those in the disability community, those with disabilities. So, again, thank you for all the work that you're doing and, making your voice heard and in return, you're helping the disability community to be seen and heard, in a broader perspective. So, thank you so much. So I want to move on to you mentioned it a little earlier where you said you were known as the butterfly on wheels, which is great. And you've written a book by that same title, and you are also the founder of Disability Empowered. So can you share with us your inspiration, first, your inspiration for writing the book and how you came up with the title? And then your inspiration of starting Disability Empowered and the work that you do through that organization.
absolutely. So the inspiration for the book is, first of all, butterflies, people sometimes talk about spirit animals. I personally think butterfly is my spirit animal. Um, because anytime I go outside and I'm going for a stroll or whatever, I see butterflies. all the time. So I connect with butterflies all the time. Um, and butterflies, represent strength and resilience and transformation. And I think those words really encapsulate my story. So that's kind of where the title came from. And just the book is just all about celebrating all the parts that make us who we are. Because nobody is just one thing, right? We're all made up of many things and have many likes and dislikes and all of that. So that's kind of where the theme of the book is all about, celebrating who we are and everything that makes us who we are. Uh, so that's where that came from. And as far as disability empowered consulting, which is my consulting business, that the concept of that came together um, when I was part of a program called Partners in Policymaking. And so during this program, we learned about policies and how policies come together. And at the end of it, our we were supposed to do a some sort of a project, right? And so what I did is was kind of looking at all of the jobs and things that I was having and what I loved about those things. Um, and at the time, a lot of the things that I was doing were reliant on grants. So there was only so much I could do in those different areas, but there were areas that I liked. So I just came up with the idea that I would take all of the things that I like about all these different things and put them into a business. So that's how that all got started.
That's great. That is, it's from the stuff that we know and we figure out how to, like you said, put it together and let's, start a business with it. That's really great. And I love the inspiration behind your book. That is, butterflies, they have a great story. And and as you said it, you feel like that you relate to that, the story of the butterfly. So thank you for sharing all of that information with us. And to wrap up the conversation, can you just share with us where people can find you online, your social media handles, for you personally and for any of the work that you do? If you would like to share where people can purchase your book, how they can purchase your book, that would be great too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So I am on Facebook. On Facebook, it's just Shameka Andrews. If you're interested in any self-advocacy stuff, you can uh, follow the Self Advocacy Association of New York State statewide page, or if you are in a particular region of New York, each of our regions have their own Facebook page. You just type in Sanys, which is SANYS, and then whatever region you're in. So if you're in New York City, if you're in Long Island, if you're in a capital region, so you can find all of those on Facebook. If you're interested in learning more about Miss Wheelchair New York, like I had said before, it's also on Facebook. It's just Miss Wheelchair New York. Um, I am also on Instagram. Um, and that's my business name, which is Disability Empowered. So you can find me on Instagram. And I'm also on LinkedIn, which is just my name, Shameka Andrews. And you also, I have to get used to this because I just started this, which is a YouTube channel. You can find me on YouTube, which is just my name, Shameka Andrews. So those are all the places you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And links to those, all of your social media handles and websites will be in the show notes for this episode. So we'll be sure to link everybody to you, connect everybody to you through the show notes. But Shamika, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your story and all of the amazing things you're doing there to help spread the word and get information out about the disability community. And, like you said, letting people know that we're in your communities and your neighborhoods and we're in your stores. We're everywhere. We're out here doing things and just wanting to have the basics in life to be successful and to be able to navigate the world around us that is not often accessible or inclusive for people with disabilities. So thank you again for the work that you do and for your time and sharing your story with us today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Our View, the podcast, where we amplify the voices and stories of those in the disabled community one conversation at a time. If this story moved you, taught you something new, or sparked a different perspective, we'd love to hear from you. Write a review of the podcast on Apple Podcast and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Follow us on all social media platforms at Our View for Life 25. At Our View, we believe that disability is not a limitation. It is a powerful part of the human experience. So until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep seeing the world through our view.